Righty-ho. So quick it's daft. But I can sum up in hopefully 3 minutes of video because I've only got 1.5 gigabytes left. Now, we got quiet before the Gorpers arrive. I'm charging. And this is my morning. If I'm busy, it ends up in just slight quick chaos, but in 5 minutes it'll be sorted out. Turn off the AC charger that's going in here. I can sum up the last 7 years of my life as follows. 2 laments, apart from your Brexit, etc. Now, I was living and working in rural areas. In fact, I kind of started out, project is too grand a word, but using Facebook to try and connect with people, Rural Ralph. I had a few jobs which were lovely jobs, but I needed people who were tuned to rural ways. But I can sum it up because even that's a fancy phrase. A rural person, and this is rural zen. This is what rural or living actually in the environment does for you. This is the quietest spot. If people come, they'll park further up there. But we have a problem here. Now, a person brought up in the countryside knows as follows. When I pull away from here, I've got to very gently disengage the clutch. Very gently. Otherwise I get wheel spin. Now, if it were the winter, then I could be stranded for half an hour while I dig it out. I don't want that aggro. Person brought up with ruralness inside of them, automatically, in snow, ice, mud, has it in their soul. Their soul is quietened. Mud. I need to slowly, gently, zenily disengage that clutch. I haven't been able to find anybody like that to share my life with for 15 years. That's what's happened in the countryside. I know there are 1 or 2 that do understand that, but women-wise, they're so lonely and they're at odds with. Right, I've got to get on with this. The second thing. Now, of course, your Monbios, your Gretas, all these people, nervy townies, which they are, wouldn't understand that. Now, that's why I started a Rural Ralph, to have conversations with people about what really is the countryside. And it kind of got diverted. But here's the other thing. Unfortunately, the problem is we have the Monbios, even Gretas, who don't understand one simple thing about the environment. This is going to sound obtuse. I've got to check. Right, it's still recording. Probably the thing over the last 10,000 years that's had the most effect on the environment is mud. Now, my best ex-friend in the last region that I was living makes most of the mud. If we were here 10,000 years ago, which is just after the ice and there weren't many humans, you wouldn't find much mud. Yes, we get mud where wildebeests cross rivers. We get mud in certain specific areas, but you don't actually get much mud in an environment like this. Almost all mud is created by humans. Oh, I'd say at least 90% the last 500 years. The mud fills up, drains down into the streams and rivers eventually, and the rate of change of increase of mud, there's an official word for it and I forget what it is. The fishes, the little fishes, can't see each other to find each other, to mate, or to avoid the predator ones. And of course the fish are, of course, at the bottom of the food chain is a little bacteria. But the the effect of that through the whole food chain all the way up is probably the thing in human behaviour that has the greatest effect on this thing called the environment, or as all the space cadets call Gaia. But your Monbios and your Gretas spin it into certain other things. That, in fact, if we somehow managed to totally reduce the mud, now, dairy cows moving around farm pasture is probably the biggest creator of mud. Okay, you've got mechanised agriculture as well, but that is a major effect, creating mud that ends up in the small rivers. But I've never heard, because these are the rhetoric is just so poor. Your Monbio can't actually even think like that because he's a nervy, largely city-based person. That's the number one thing that has changed I'd say almost, but the problem is your scientists, being nervy townies as well, largely, they can't think. This is not a sexy subject, mud. They don't think in terms of doing that research. It's much more sexy to look at the effect of Prozac leaking into these streams around Hay-on-Wye, which massively increased about 15 years ago, and things like that. That's headlines. And of course, there's an argument that those headlines reach the public consciousness, but this is probably the thing that would make the greatest bang for buck in terms of the whole Gaia ecosystem, is to address mud. And I've never heard anybody even speak about this. I wrote in my own diaries about a year ago on my notepads. Remember, mud is not really a natural thing. And it isn't. Now, of course, that can be smashed down like, yeah, but have you been to that riverbank? There are certain areas of riverbanks which are muddy, but not that many. Mud over the course of hundreds of years gets washed away. And of course, when you have a little bit of a bank collapse, you get new mud. Absolutely no question about it, obviously. But I think if a scientist were to properly look at an environment, there is far, far more mud created over a period of time by human activity than natural activity. And that has a, in quotation marks, negative effect, a massive negative effect on the food chain by disrupting the ability of the aquatic life to function as it's evolved over forever, and is the greatest increased rate of change